So, Nicola, so many women have built lives that look successful on paper, yet privately feel exhausted, disconnected, or restless. Why do you think so many women have stopped listening to themselves?
We live in a world that makes it very hard for us to listen to ourselves. I think,
Mm,
not to like make an excuse of it, but I think we live in a very fast-paced world where there's a lot of, or I think a lot of us are more in a state of doing rather than in a state of being.
mm,
And so, for example, like in yoga, we speak about coming into presence so that our bodies can actually be in the moment. And I think if life is so fast-paced, we're almost just running on autopilot without actually being present in what we're doing. And so we just shift from doing to doing to doing to doing. And then when we live our lives like that consistently, it brings us into a place of disconnection from ourselves because we're not actually living from the body. We're living from maybe the mind, which sometimes we do need to live from the mind. I don't think there's anything wrong with living from the mind, but it's really important to actually be able to inhabit our bodies as we move through life because otherwise we just become totally disconnected from the body and then we don't realize, oh, the body's actually feeling tired or yeah.
mm. So you think primarily women become so disconnected because they stop listening to their bodies?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think, maybe it's not even that women stop listening to their bodies. I think a lot of the time they do listen to their bodies, but maybe they struggle to actually implement what their bodies are asking of them because we live in such a fast-paced world.
Mm,
And it's not the case for everybody. Some women do have a lot of time on their hands. Maybe then that comes down to, discipline or whatever it might be, or to actually do the thing that we need to do because
mhm,
it's easier to just keep doing what we've always been doing.
mm.
Um, but yeah, that really can lead to a lot of fatigue, a lot of exhaustion for the body.
Yeah. And so you're a mother of two.
Hmm.
How are you navigating, life in terms of being connected to your body and who you are and with motherhood? Because obviously it's such a big part of your life where
Hmm.
most of your time is occupied with, parenting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely been quite a journey for me. I think even pre-motherhood, I was very connected to myself, to my body, but then suddenly you've got these two other beings to care for and you care so much for them that they become like your priority. And it's so easy to suddenly prioritize them over yourself in every single thing that you do. Of course, when they are so dependent on you, they are a priority and you do need to sometimes prioritize them over yourself. But I think it's when we always do that then that's when it leads to that exhaustion or that disconnection from self. And for me, I'm 6 years into this journey of motherhood and I'm still learning how to stay connected to myself. I think for me, one of the biggest things has been, well, obviously, like I've been on this journey of self-reflection, of self-inquiry, but within that, I've really had to implement more boundaries around my time, the way I spend my time, around my children. And I think for me, boundaries has been such a lifesaver. And then also just following through on them because we can say, oh, we've got this boundary that we want to start implementing. But then actually remembering to do that in the moment and taking action on that, I think that's one of the hardest parts.
Mm.
And so that's what has been part of my practice. And it's something that I'm still learning to do. But I think with having those boundaries, it gives us something to return to. It anchors something within ourselves so that, we can always remember to return, to come back to this place of, oh no, okay, I'm also important. My kids are important, they're a priority, but I've got this boundary in place for a
Yeah,
specific reason. And I'm going to return to that to look after myself as well.
that's right. And what are those boundaries look like in your life at the moment for
Um,
self-care?
self-care, I know that I need time to myself every single day. I don't need to have, say, a whole hour of time to myself. Sometimes it's just like having 10 minutes to myself in the morning before the kids wake up, or, just drinking while they eat their breakfast. I can drink my coffee, read my book, and then I can move on with my day. That really helps me a lot. And then also just actually taking time away from everybody and just being on my own. I actually love having moments of solitude to myself, and literally just not even having people in the space with me is so important. It feels like this energetic cleanse for myself. Not that other people's, my children's or my partner's energy is like harmful or dirty or anything like that, but it's just to clear out the air almost around myself, within my body and around my body. Those are very important for me. And then also just boundaries in terms of, like, if my kids if they keep asking over and over and over and over again, it's just saying no and just being firm with that. And that requires me having the capacity to deal with their meltdowns, because I could very easily just be like, no, no, no. And then they keep pushing, and then being like, fine, okay, and then giving into it, so that I avoid having to deal with one of their meltdowns, because that's actually the easier option. But long term, it's the harder option because I'm not looking after myself. So yeah, just sticking to that boundary and then breathing my way through all the emotions that come up within them and helping to, regulate them as well.
So I wonder, because you said one of the boundary is to have a space for you. And so I imagine other parents watching us now would probably question, where is she sending the kids, or where is she finding this time to find this space? So how would, obviously you said finding time for yourself, 10 minutes in the morning, it's still better than nothing. It doesn't need to be hours and hours. What about creating space for you to have no people around you? How would that look like in a parenting life, I guess? How are you navigating that?
Well, I am very fortunate that I have a partner who lives with me, so I can lean on him for support, which is great. Very aware that there's some single parents out there, and I have huge respect to them. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
But it can, I think, weaving it in, I don't want to say like you can weave it in when you're driving in the car, like to work, because yes, you can do your breaths while you're doing that, but it sort of isn't the same as being in a space where, maybe you feel more safe. That feels a little bit more grounding rather than like being on a busy road. So sometimes it's like, just setting the kids up with an activity in one room, knowing that they're safe there while they do that said activity for 10 to 15 minutes, and just taking yourself into another room. Or maybe it's even being in the same room with them, putting headphones in and listening to whatever meditation it might be. So you can still see them if you need to see them. I think like those, I know you asked about creating space away from the kids, but like those things, yes, they are very important. And I think a lot of mums, I just want to say, I think a lot of mums or parents will say, what's the point of doing those things? I actually just need this time away. But if you're really struggling to create time away, like, highly recommend still weaving those other things into your daily life. But if you do need to create space away from the children, I think community, it plays such a big part in making sure that you, or working at least, to have people around you who you can trust to, leave your kids with. And this is the really hard thing about this world that we live in now, is that for many of us, we don't have that village of people around us anymore who we can lean on for support. And also, I think asking for help is such a difficult thing as a mother. I've really had to learn to ask for help, because for such a long time I was in this mindset of, I can do it all. I can take care of myself, even with my children around. But I've learned how important it is for me to have that time, that space away from my children, away from anybody, just to be with myself, so I can really see clearly and feel. And learning to ask for help has been such an important thing for me. And it was really challenging at first, but now I know I can feel it when something's brewing inside of me, and I'm like, I need to move away. I need to take a break. is listening to that voice as well. And yeah, I think we have to really be able to listen to our bodies. And I think for mothers who might be feeling really lost and disconnected to themselves, it's really difficult to hear that, to listen to that voice, or to even hear it when it's trying to communicate something with you, and to just continue pushing through all the time. So yeah, just building on being able to, tune into yourself, to listen to that intuition, that internal voice within, asking for help. And if you feel like you don't have anybody to lean on, actively going out and trying to build that community for yourself. Because I think so many mothers, especially, they complain, this was myself included, that there's no village around to support us. And there's just this like frustration of, oh, I don't have anybody I can lean on. But unfortunately, maybe in this day and age, you have to go out and create that village for yourself. But that's hard work as well, putting yourself out there, trying to build new connections with other mothers or people. But if you want it, you've got to go create it for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it is hard because you have to take care of yourself, you have to do the parenting work, and you have to create the community. But like I said, that's an option that it's available as well. You said we can continue complaining, we don't have this or we don't have that, or we can do something about it and create something, and instead of saying, for example, I'm so busy, or like you said, it's hard to ask for help, we have the choice to ask for help. And maybe, like you said, that could be, it's not easy, of course, to ask for help. And especially I feel like when society puts so much pressure on motherhood and how female should be, and how as a mom you should be able to do everything and be the householder, the cleaner, the nanny, the successful woman at work, and everything in between. It's just so easier to have to believe that, or I have to show that I'm strong, I have to show that I have everything together, even though you are crumbling on the inside and you're like, oh my God, I'm just losing it here. So do you think most women are living according to their values, or do you believe most women live by other people's expectations that have maybe been inherited?
I think there definitely is a movement happening now where there's this rise of women saying no, like if this, whatever this is, that's saying that we need to live in a certain way, like, and stepping into a life that feels more aligned. I've definitely sensed this in women that I connect with in person, in women online. I've seen it, I've read it, and I felt this in myself. I think for a long time there was this like girl boss era, like with the rise of feminism and like, oh, we can do it all. And I think now women are saying, and mothers are saying, like, screw this, we don't have to do it all. And by saying, oh, we can do it all, like I can, like, I think so I just want to say it's really empowering for women to also be in the workspace and all that. Like, yes, that was amazing. Like that movement needed to happen. But now I sense that we're shifting into this new rise of like, okay, I can be in the workspace, but that doesn't mean that I need to do everything else. I don't need to prove myself because while maybe not the whole world thinks that women are strong, I think it has been proved more over the last maybe decade that women are capable of doing a lot of different things. And so now a lot of women are sticking to their values and being like, actually, this is crazy for me to have to, be the person who takes care of the house and works and looks after the kids and everything that you've already listed. That said, I think a lot of women are afraid to step into that role. I think a lot of women say, they reject this idea that we need to do everything. But then again, it's the taking action. That's actually the hard part. It's really easy to be like, no, I reject this. That's not like, I don't want to live my life like this. But then actually changing and being that person who's brave enough to, move forward on those new values that you want to implement. I think that's that's the hard part.
Mm.
And there definitely are women who are doing this, but it's scary because I think a lot of our mentality has been inherited. You know, I was actually speaking to a friend last week about this, how women in the past depended on their partners for survival. You know, when women couldn't work, when women didn't have freedom of speech, you know, of voicing their opinions, they had to find a partner to survive. It was literally survival. And so they had to suppress so many parts of themselves in order to just live. And now, where we have so many more rights as women, and where we have these platforms like social media where we can just openly share and speak and like share our opinions with the world, we've got these platforms where we can, you know, share and speak out what we believe in and what we stand for. And so actually taking action on that is the hardest part, because it's so deeply ingrained in our bodies, you know, what is safe for us to, or how we're supposed to move through life in a way that feels safe for us, because, you know, it's based on how our mothers moved through life and how our grandmothers moved through life, because there absolutely is a ripple effect energetically and physically in the body, especially if we get into somatics. And that lives on in our bodies, and it's a process of repatterning what the body deems as safe and how we want to show up in life. And that is really, really hard work. So I think it's really easy to say, you know, I want to live by my values, but then actually going and doing that's the hardest part, because it brings us to our edges. It brings us into carrying ourselves and moving through life in a totally different way that we've never done before, that we've never seen anybody model or like in front of us, around us before. And that can feel very terrifying, very scary.
So if on the somatic, you've mentioned somatic work. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Sure. So somatics is a practice where we help the body to remember how it feels to be itself, essentially to help the cells become aware of themselves so that we're able to feel more, or not necessarily feel more. We will feel more, but it's to remember how to feel, because we are these sensory beings, and so many of our senses have been repressed or clouded by the mind, or, you know, what we are perceiving in reality. And so somatic work is the work of bringing ourselves back into the body. Why do we want to work somatically? So that we can remember who we are, and so that we can express ourselves more authentically in life. You know, we've come to this earth, we've chosen to come to this earth to exist as ourselves. So what's the point of being here if we are existing through these layers of what's been projected onto us, through this patterning that lives in our body that maybe is not actually inherently who we are at our core, like in our own unique essence. Maybe we're moving through life by the patterns that perhaps lived in our mothers, that lived in our foremothers, and that's been passed on through generations, through conditioning, or even physically. You know, if you were in your mother's womb and then you were existing as an egg in your grandmother's womb, whatever experiences they went through has been passed from generation to generation, and that lives in the cells of our body. So to be able to return to our bodies, to the cells of our bodies, and be with the felt sense of that, we're able to feel what it means to be us, and to see where we are entangled, you know, through these patterns, through that maybe don't belong to us, or through these experiences that are limiting us from expressing ourselves in our truth.
So saying that, how do we know when we're living somebody else's version of success?
There will be a misalignment within, but we might not actually realize that it's a misalignment. It might show up, it will show up through the body. Perhaps in the form of like depression or frustration, feeling as, something is missing, or maybe there's like a sense of grief for this future that could be yours, but you're not living it because you're living somebody else's version of success. And it's really hard to actually, I think, realize that if it is the grief, but you will feel it in your body. It will feel as though, this is just based on my own personal experience, it feels as though, something is missing. You can have all the things, but if you're not feeling, it's not even that you have to feel happy. It's that sense of like fulfillment and yes, like I think yes, that feeling of yes. I think if you're lacking that feeling of yesness, then that is a clear indication that you might be living somebody else's version of success.
Speak a lot about body wisdom. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so our bodies are so intelligent, and they are always in communication with us. The body speaks through movement. Even if we're sitting completely still, there's still internal movement happening inside the body. The way that you're sitting is prompted by whatever is happening inside with the organs, with the fascia, with the muscles. If you're tense in your muscles, that will change the way that you're sitting. And also, obviously, the way that you walk around, the way that you move through life, the way that you speak. And so even in these very ordinary ways, the body is trying to communicate something to us about its internal state. And this actually runs even so much deeper. If we're doing any sort of self-inquiry or any internal work, if we want to work with any wounding or anything about ourselves that we're trying to unpack or disentangle, if we are able to tune into the bodies, to not always necessarily shut off our external environment, but just to be able to sense into the body and to allow the body to sense itself, whatever state it's in, the body will communicate with us and share this body wisdom with us. It might show up as, like thoughts. It might change. If we're listening to our body, the thoughts that arise in our mind might be a lot more intuitive rather than just like mental chatter. Maybe it will show up as, I call them like spiritual downloads, which are almost like downloads from God or source, whatever you believe in. And because, especially if we're looking at yoga, and it depends which somatic lineage, the body is a representation of God. God lives in the body. It's consciousness at its core, is this expression of consciousness that is moving through my body, and that this is the wisdom that I need to know in order to continue moving through life in a more authentic way, so that I can live a more truthful, aligned life.
But I wonder, can our bodies tell us when we're out of alignment before our mind realize it?
Yeah, I think this would show up in the body sometimes as like sickness, as illness, as burnout, a sense of, not feeling your optimal, not feeling your best. And of course, like, especially as women, we go through cycles, like monthly cycles, and there'll be weeks when we've got more energy, weeks when we have less energy. But I think in the greater picture, there's this sense of, like stickiness in the body, and that can show up as sometimes also like what I brought up before, that sense of dread, of like freezing, or maybe of like anxiety in the body, that can show that we're misaligned in some sort of a way. And sometimes it takes time for our minds to catch up, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're anxious until we reflect back and we're like, wow, well, this is what happens to me, at least. And I'm like, wow, I was actually really anxious today. I didn't realize when I was in the moment, because I was so moving through this way of doing all day long. So sometimes it only comes in hindsight. But yeah, the body, it's always communicating, and however it's showing up, however we're moving through life, even sometimes if we're just walking through life, I think it shows up in our energy, like the way that you walk, the way that you carry yourself in a room. The body's speaking. It's trying to show you something about yourself. and it takes time for the mind to catch up, or to sometimes just see. Sometimes you see yourself like in a photograph or something, and you're like, oh, did I really look like that on that day? And you didn't realize maybe that you were feeling mentally, like depressed or rubbish that day. But then in hindsight, again, you look and you're like, oh, my body was actually really showing it. I think that's always really fascinating.
Wow. And what is one way to start feeling what your body is trying to tell you?
Practicing, I think. It's really easy to say, oh, we've got to sense into our bodies more so that we can live an aligned life. But telling yourself you're going to do that, and then actually being able to do that in your day to day, it's very difficult to make that happen if you don't practice. Like anything in life that you want to try and do, it takes practice to get there. And so being, devoted to having a daily practice or a weekly practice whenever you can, to step into finding that level of awareness within yourself, within your body, so that you're able to move through your day to day and catch yourself. I think it's really is this process of catching, of being like, oh, I'm here, it's okay. And reminding your body, like, you're safe, it's okay, whatever you're feeling, just being with that discomfort and then carrying on moving through your day. But we can only do that if we practice catching ourselves in a practice. Well, I don't want to say that we can only do that, but I think that's the best way, is to actually practice doing it so that it feels more natural, because it's also like this process of, when we practice, we're reminding our body that it's safe to be in these feelings of discomfort. And so that in itself is expanding your capacity to be able to hold discomfort when you're in your yoga practice or your somatics practice, so that then when you are moving through day-to-day life, when you land in that same level of discomfort, that your nervous system doesn't suddenly freak out and take your mind somewhere else where you're not able to catch yourself and hold yourself through that discomfort.
So if whoever is watching now, let's say a busy mom that has 20 minutes a day to practice connecting to her body, can you walk her? How would that practice look like during these 20 minutes?
Yeah. So that's not a lot of time. And as a mother myself, sometimes you don't want to also have this very detailed, busy time of, well, not busy, but this very in-depth, like, process to your practice. If it's only going to be 20 minutes, you just want something super simple, something super easy, where you almost don't even have to think, about what you're doing. Like, I sometimes find if I'm trying to do a yoga practice, I'm like, I just want somebody else to guide me. I don't care if it's the most shitty yoga practice or shitty flow. Sorry, I'm swearing. I hope that's okay.
That's okay.
The most like shitty or average flow. It's just the fact that somebody else is telling me what to do that is like medicine for my body. And so I think having 20 minutes, still trying to tell yourself, oh no, I'm going to do this pose, I'm going to do this pose. It might be okay for a mother if she's used to, doing a yoga practice, but if it's something that's new to them, I would say finding, like, maybe if you feel safe closing your eyes, maybe putting like just closing off the senses a little bit. Not because we don't want to sense more, we want to be able to sense more. That's the whole point of the practice. But maybe just, putting some headphones on and putting on some sort of grounding music and just closing your eyes and just being held by the music. Because if you don't have a guide in person, then at least you've got the music holding you, or you've got your space holding you, or the nature sounds, whatever it might be if you're in the garden. And then just bringing your awareness into your body, noticing what you feel in your body, and giving yourself space to move as well. I think, like, meditation is a beautiful practice to be able to sit in stillness, but for a busy mom who's got so much on her plate, like, it can be very hard to sit in complete stillness. And then there comes this, if you're sitting and you're trying to be still and you're meditating, you're like, oh, I can't move. If I'm moving, I'm not doing it properly. And then the mind gets really loud, which in itself is a practice to observe and listen to. But for me, what I have found to just be so allowing is to have a practice with, like, maybe putting some music on and just seeing what the body wants to do. If it is laying down in stillness and not doing anything, then so be it. Trusting the body that it's intelligent enough to be able to do the work for you. You don't always have to cognitively, like, say and tell your body what to do. And maybe that's stillness, and then maybe you are seated listening to some music or listening to nature, and maybe you just feel, I want to move my arms, and then you just move your arms, and then once that's done, let it be done. Maybe you sit in stillness, or maybe it's like, now I want to extend my legs, extending the legs. And it's just really finding that basic listening of what does the body want in this moment, what does it need in this moment. I think, I would recommend that.
So why do you think so many women are losing the connection with themselves after becoming mothers?
So before becoming a mother, before we step into the role of, mother, we are in this role of, or not role, we're expressing this archetype of the maiden, which is pretty much from when you're born through into becoming a mother, but it really becomes awakened, when a woman gets her first bleed. So like teenage years or preteen. And that is when this maiden essence really starts to show up a lot, which, if you don't know what that is, it's, this like playfulness, this flirtatiousness with life. If you think about, I think about who I was before I became a mother, it's you're really daring, you are willing to just, try anything, and whatever the outcome, so be it. Obviously we have our reserves as well, but that's in general the essence. Because there's less, I don't want to say there's no responsibility, there's less responsibility. But then suddenly you become a mother, and you've got this huge responsibility, and now this whole other life. And at first, if I think to my own journey, it's really beautiful and it's really exciting, like becoming a mother. It's because it's all new, and there's like this fresh energy and this just surge of wanting to provide for this little human being, and that they just become your everything. But then slowly over time, what happens is you start to, for a lot of mothers, this can happen. They start to grieve the past version of who they were, because suddenly it's like I don't want to say the novelty totally wears off, but the novelty does start to wear off as motherhood becomes your norm and you get used to it. And then the body goes through this like grieving process of like, what about that version of who you were that you suddenly left behind? And it's such a huge initiation moving from maidenhood into motherhood as well. And to be able to, accept that initiation, I think acceptance is a huge one. That can be really challenging as well, to suddenly be like, well, my life is different now. My life has changed. My life is never going to be what it was. And I think a lot of mothers lose themselves in that process without actually being able to see it, of like, okay, that's who I was. Those are the attributes that I had. And, how can I still, I think sometimes mothers, they try to hold onto that maidenhood too much without stepping into motherhood and allowing motherhood, like, surrendering to motherhood and allowing it to change who they are as a person. But then also, I think some mothers, they get so immersed in motherhood that they struggle to, weave the maiden parts of themselves into their daily life. Because when you become a mother, you don't just leave who you were behind and be like, goodbye, like there's parts of who you were in your maiden self that are so important to carry through into motherhood, to still, integrate them and to be in them. And it really is this dance of like, okay, I'm flowing into like my maiden self. You can still be playful and flirtatious and like have fun with life and still be a mother as well. I think just like clinging on to one or the other is where I think a lot of mothers tend to lose themselves, rather than just including everything that they are, everything that they have been, everything that their body has been through in life. Of course, there might be parts of who you were before becoming a mother that are maybe not very helpful to who you are now as a mother, and maybe you don't want to carry them forward, and that's okay if you consciously choose to bid them farewell. But undoubtedly, there's going to be parts of yourself that do need to be carried through in order for you to stay aligned and to stay true to yourself as a mother. I think when we prioritize our own needs, we're modeling that for our children. So, my children, they copy me, they mimic me, they learn behaviors from me. And so if I'm not prioritizing my own needs, how will they learn to prioritize their own needs? And not only just that, I think prioritizing my own needs, it helps me to show up as the best version of myself for my children. If I'm just constantly, shutting off whatever it is that I need and just giving to them all the time, they might look happy because they've got all of me, but then one day when they move into adulthood, they'll think, oh, well, this is what a mother is supposed to do. This is how she's supposed to behave. And then they might go out into, well, I mean, not motherhood, they're going to become fathers, but maybe if they get married or whatever to a woman, then they might subconsciously expect the woman to, sort of martyr herself for everybody else and not to prioritize her own needs. So it really does ripple through into my children's lives as well. And so, yeah, also, like, I'm my own person. Like, apart from just being a mother, I'm still me. Mother is not the only label that I have. And so being able to stay true to all the other parts of myself as well is so important. And I have to prioritize my needs when it comes to that.
And prioritizing your need, it's part of you being aligned within, because if you don't, then you're living misaligned life.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a lot harder to try live an aligned life if you're not prioritizing what you need in order to get there, And living an aligned life, it's not always about getting somewhere. I think it's about finding as much alignment as you possibly can in the now. I think it's really easy to paint a picture of, oh, this is what my aligned life would look like, and then always constantly striving for that with completely disregarding what is happening in the present moment. And so, yeah, I think being able to assess what are my needs right now is very important so that you can show up in an energy that is aligned so that it can then bring you forward to where you want to move to.
What do you think people are searching for?
I think people are searching for the ability to be able to express themselves as authentically as possible. I think even if maybe they haven't even realized that, I think everybody wants to be received for who they are. Everybody wants to be loved for who they are, not in the sense of like, oh, everybody loves me, but just in the sense of like truly feeling seen, truly feeling heard, and truly feeling held for everything that they are. Because we are all very messy humans, I think, and we mask and we hide so much of that. And that in itself can just bring us into this feeling of like not, I don't want to say not enoughness of, but maybe feeling as though we're not able to receive enough back from life, or as though we're not receiving enough back from life. Yeah. So because if we think about life is, it's a giving and receiving. There's this constant exchange of energy between us and others, our environments, and we can only receive as much as we give. So if we want to receive more love, we also need to be willing to, give more love. And that includes giving love to ourselves. And giving, if we want to show up authentically in life, we have to love ourselves first before we can do that, to be able to show up and be like, well, I'm just going to be me. And if that person doesn't like it, it's okay. I'm grounded in myself enough to know that it's okay, that I'm going to be safe, that I can carry on, that life will continue and I'm going to be just fine.
Yeah, so it's not, like you said, people are looking for to be able to express themselves. You said people are looking for to be seen for who they are.
So what I believe is that everything in our reality, or whatever presents itself in our reality, is some sort of mirror in some way, shape, or form for ourselves to look within ourselves, what we need to do, how we need to shift something within us so that we're able to move through life in a more aligned way. And so if we are seeking something that is external to us, but we're feeling like we cannot find it, well, I think it's important that we look at our reality for what it is, that we come into a place of full acceptance of it, full receiving of the reality, even if we don't like the reality, so that then we can look within ourselves and be like, what is this? What is my situation? What information is it giving me about myself? There must be something within myself that needs looking at so that I'm able to change what is showing up for me in my external world.
I love that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us today
Thank you.
and for your wisdom.
Thank you so much.